We have some breaking news coming from the United States of America. U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced on Wednesday that House Republicans will move ahead with an impeachment inquiry into the U.S. President Joe Biden. More details coming in. McCarthy has made it clear that there will be a vote for an impeachment inquiry, but as of now, he doesn't appear to have the votes to open one. McCarthy has been signaling a Biden impeachment inquiry for weeks. So far, Republicans have not been able to prove any wrongdoing by President Biden. But could this impeachment happen? What does this inquiry entail? Why is it happening now? To discuss all this and more, joining me now is our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York. Susan, this is some shocking news out of nowhere, it seems. Tell us a little bit more about this impeachment inquiry and why now?
Yeah, so it's the first step in an impeachment trial, basically by the U.S. government. It's sort of an investigation, an inquiry, and this is something that Kevin McCarthy was expected to do because a lot of his Republican colleagues were calling for it. However, once it, passes the inquiry stage and the Judicial Committee comes up, for example, theoretically, with enough evidence, then the House would have to vote on an actual impeachment of President Biden, and that needs 218 votes. We do know about 5 Republicans so far are not on board, but nonetheless, it is a headline-making situation. It's important for the Republicans and McCarthy to make this statement the first day they come back to Capitol Hill. And why now? Well, mostly because it seems that they're not getting the answers that they want when it comes to Hunter Biden's business dealings and whether or not Joe Biden was involved in them or not. An impeachment inquiry gives them subpoena power now.
Right. Susan, stay with us on this broadcast. Let's, for our viewers, play out the bite. Let's see what the House Speaker had to say.
That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. It's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well. That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. It's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well.
Now, to put this statement into perspective, we still have Susan Tehrani with us from New York. Susan, help us understand what are the reasons behind this impeachment inquiry. Tell us a little bit about the allegations against Hunter Biden and what does this mean for Biden's presidency?
Yeah, well, allegations against Hunter Biden is basically he used the office of vice president during the Obama administration, which is his father's, to gain access to not only business dealings overseas, but also get his father involved as well. These are the allegations that Joe Biden also directly benefited from Hunter Biden's business dealings. While this is not a Hunter Biden situation, the first person that's going to be subpoenaed perhaps and investigated is Hunter Biden. Ultimately, what they want to get to is Joe Biden's involvement. And it's so serious that we heard just a few days ago the White House admit that they actually have an impeachment war room set up to deal with something like this. So they're expecting it. And it's going to be interesting to see how the White House responds.
Right, Susan, that's a very interesting choice of words that the White House has used. And reports are also saying that the White House is ramping up a war room to battle this expected impeachment inquiry. In fact, we're also seeing reports saying that President Biden's team studied President Clinton's White House 1998 response to impeachment as a model to sort of do the damage control that will ensue.
Yeah, although, the stories were very different, but when it comes to impeachment proceedings here in the United States, the process is the same. And I will say that this inquiry really is a first in a very long process. Ultimately, it has to go to the Senate as well to really unseat a sitting president, which even Bill Clinton, after he was impeached, continued to be president. But the problem right now with Joe Biden is that he's not as popular as Bill Clinton was. Bill Clinton, at the time that these proceedings were going on, was extremely popular among the American people. Joe Biden's standing, because of his age, because of the economy, is not in a good situation. So we'll have to see how this really impacts the president and the White House and him running for re-election.
You know, Susan, the reason I asked the question about the timing of this impeachment inquiry is because, as we know, the US president was in India for the G20 summit in the Indian capital. But back home, he was doing a lot of firefighting. His numbers, his polling was extremely low. The US economy had been in question. Americans were not too happy. There were questions also raised about his age. And now this inquiry, the allegations against his son, Hunter, could this wield a huge blow to his presidency?
Just like we have to wait and see how this plays out, but it wouldn't be surprising that just the way that, President Trump's impeachments and his legal problems have helped President Trump, it's yet to be seen whether or not the Democrats will rally around this president and sort of bank on this, saying that the Republicans are not focusing on what they need to do in the House and they're, distracted and whatnot. President Biden has a lot of problems. And this inquiry, the reason it's now is because time and again, the judicial committees have asked for documents from various institutions and organizations, and they haven't received it. So with this inquiry, it really gives them a broader authority to not only ask for documents and evidence, but also, again, subpoena power is very important. I mean, can you imagine the theatrics of Hunter Biden or being subpoenaed and having to testify before the House as his father is running for re-election?
Right, Susan, stay with us. I'll just catch our viewers with what this story is all about. And I also like to remind our viewers who have tuned into WION that you're catching this story first on WION World. Is one big breaking news coming from the United States of America. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has said that Republicans will move ahead with an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. McCarthy has made it clear that there will be a vote for an impeachment inquiry, but as of now, he doesn't appear to have the votes to open one. McCarthy has been signaling a Biden impeachment inquiry for weeks now, and so far Republicans have not been able to prove any wrongdoing by President Biden. Listen in to what McCarthy said.
That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. It's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well.
Right, Susan Tehrani is still with us from New York. Susan, in fact, we have a comment from the White House. The White House has slammed the Biden impeachment probe as extreme politics. Expected, I mean, there was no other way to sort of tackle this. What do you have to say on that?
Yeah, well, this has really been the policy of the Biden administration, is to call the other side extreme, MAGA extremists, being too extreme to the right. So it's not a surprise that they use the word extreme once again. But a lot of analysts are warning the Republicans that while this is a good first step, for them not to get carried away, for example, the way the Democrats did with President Biden and President Trump's inquiry, and that to keep it to the evidence and really move in an effective manner. If the Republicans are able to do that, then perhaps something will come out of this impeachment inquiry, or this inquiry in general, and we'll have answers to what extent the president was involved in his son's business dealing, in his family's business dealings. I mean, we know there are more than a dozen LLCs from the Biden family getting money from overseas. If they do get carried away, then yes, it will just, end up in politicization, extreme politics, as the White House says, and it won't really have the weight that it's needed to carry. But Kevin McCarthy didn't have a choice. I mean, he had a lot of his members really from the beginning of summer asking him to do this. For example, even Congressman Matt Gaetz, he was ready to give a speech against McCarthy if McCarthy didn't announce this today, coming back to work on Capitol Hill.
Right. Susan, what's so bad or in these documents that could jeopardize Biden's presidency? That's, I think, what everyone wants to know. And that is what contextualizes the timing of this inquiry.
Yeah, well, so we know for one thing, Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine and that incident where then Vice President Joe Biden fired a prosecutor. And he admitted that, and he said that I will basically keep U.S. funds from you if the prosecutor is not fired. But now there are questions on whether or not he had any interest in that. And then there's a slew of business dealings in China as well. There are text messages that haven't been explained on the part of Hunter Biden. And then, of course, there are those that came forward, including Hunter's business partner, that said, the, quote, big guy in Hunter Biden's emails is indeed Joe Biden.
Right, Susan, thank you so much for all those updates. This is a story we'll continue to track. Big breaking coming from the US, and more updates will follow. For now, let's move on. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.